Why does the Philippines keep using egg machines? Provoking China in the South China Sea. July 20th. 2 rubber boats from the Philippines. Ignoring multiple explicit warnings. Ramming a Chinese patrol boat. African personnel were the first to attack our Coast Guard with oars. In the end, he was punished with a cane. The Philippines chose this time to stir up trouble. One of the most direct reasons is our Foreign Minister Wang Yi. At this point, the odds are in Manila, the capital of the Philippines. Attending the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting. ASEAN is a gathering of all Southeast Asian countries, a government-based international organization. Foreign ministers from various countries periodically. We would gather for a meeting, discuss cooperation in areas such as regional economic security. Although China is not an ASEAN parliamentarian, but as ASEAN's most important economic partner, he was also invited to attend the ASEAN meeting. Now, the Philippines has finally become the rotating chair of ASEAN. He wanted to use this opportunity to bring the South China Sea issue to the forefront. After the incident was exposed, the Philippines is turning the tables on the international stage. Released photos of injured messengers. This creates a strong image of China bullying the weak. This narrative is not entirely without market within ASEAN. China's scale is undeniable. Any ASEAN country facing China alone will instinctively feel anxiety about unequal strength. The Philippines has taken advantage of this anxiety. He hopes to package the South China Sea issue as a threat from China to all of Southeast Asia. However, the Philippines has repeatedly provoked China. There are deeper reasons as well. July 19th. A marine biologist from the United States. He was shot and killed in the Philippines. The robbers fled after stealing cash and laptops. Amid the continued decline in the Philippine economy, more and more Filipinos are desperate. He started engaging in illegal and criminal activities. The entire third quarter. According to statistics from the Philippine police, a total of 7,883 major crimes occurred nationwide. The Philippine National Police stated, due to rising prices, the police are prepared for a surge in robberies and thefts. Marx Jr. has been in power for 4 years. The Philippine economy is getting worse and worse. First quarter of 2026. The Philippine Bureau of Statistics released a set of disturbing data. GDP growth with similar issues is only 2.8%. This figure is far below the government's previously set target of 5.0% to 6.0%. This marks the third consecutive quarter of slowing economic growth. April 2026. Philippines Consumer Price Index surges to 7.2%. This marks a new high in nearly 3 years. By the end of 2025, a large-scale corruption case in flood control infrastructure has emerged in the Philippines. The amount involved is enormous, shaking both court and country. After the case was exposed, the government has had to tighten fiscal scrutiny. Treasury reserves are tight. Macroeconomic control measures are limited. The World Bank had predicted rising energy prices and an inflation crisis. It could affect between 1.3 million and 3.1 million Filipinos, falling below the poverty line. In such economic conditions, a rational government, all our energy should be devoted to relief and development. China has long remained the Philippines' largest trading partner, the largest source of imports. Any sane Philippine politician should understand. Provoking China brings no benefit. But external adversaries are always the cheapest tool for unity. The Marx family has a complex historical legacy in Philippine politics. After 20 years in power, Marx was overthrown by the People Power movement. He went into exile in Hawaii until his death. Little Marx wanted to consolidate the legitimacy of his administration. A political narrative capable of building domestic consensus is needed. When the flood control infrastructure corruption case was exposed, the energy crisis has plunged people into hardship. When the shadow of idiocy looms over the economy, external toughness has become the lowest cost source of legitimacy for governance. Just turn your attention to the South China Sea, creating one friction after another. The focus of domestic conflicts can be temporarily shifted, but its short-term effects are significant. The long-term cost is extremely high. When the government turns foreign policy into a tool for domestic politics, the country's strategic autonomy will gradually erode. The Philippines is experiencing It is precisely this loss of autonomy. Meanwhile, the United States and Japan have seized this vulnerability in Philippine politics. He tied it tightly to his own chariot. In April 2026, May aircraft will hold its annual shoulder-to-shoulder joint military exercise. Unlike before, the Japan Self-Defense Forces officially participated in this exercise for the first time. About 1,400 ground-level Maritime Self-Defense Force personnel were dispatched. Live-fire training with the Type 88 land-based anti-ship missile was also conducted on the Philippine mainland. 2 months later, Sanai Koshi met with Philippine President Marcos Jr. in Tokyo, announced the elevation of the Philippines to Japan's first comprehensive strategic partner in Southeast Asia, and announced the official start of negotiations for a Pacific-exclusive economic zone. July 12. Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi. Regarding the so-called South China Sea arbitration ruling. Statement made 10 years after its introduction. Openly declaring that China's refusal to accept the ruling violates the principle of peaceful dispute resolution. It falsely claims that Japan's interests in South China Sea affairs are officially managed. The United States wants to use the South China Sea dispute, dragging China into a possible quagmire of war, delaying China's development. Japan hopes to use the China threat theory, break through the peaceful constitution for yourself, achieving the path of armed action. Each country has its own agenda, and all have clear strategic benefits. But the Philippines is confronting China. What can it gain? Except for the political interests of a few politicians within Marx's government. The Philippines as a country. These people. The only rewards from this confrontation are disasters. The Philippines' real rival has never been China. It's because of its fragile economic structure, and that government with incompetent governance.